Hell yeah, dog. That looks about like the presentation I did. MAGFest, how are we doing? Like I said before, you always have to ask 2 times. I said MAGFest, how are we doing? First day, we sold out, longest line, it went back and around. I don't know why I'm bragging about this, it sucked to be in that line. But are we ready to talk about transit walkability and all kinds of other Can I curse? Shit, I don't give a fuck. Yes! So, welcome to Cities as Bad Game Design. I am Professor Nick. He, him. You can find me on Twitter. I'm not going to call it... There's kids in here. Darn X. or anything else Elon decides to call it. But Professor_Nick. You can find me on Instagram as Nick_Dooma. Dooma. Or whatever else handles I think of in this weekend. So, I'm going to talk about transit through the lens of game design. I made this at like 4 a.m. last night. Let's get started. So, what do we have here? Welcome to Real Life Simulator, aka 22.024, aka Outside. Some of you may be touching grass for the first time. It's an experience for me too. I think we'll get through it. So, some quick notes. I do not know everything. There may be things that you know I do not know. If so, raise your hand, and as time permits, I'm going to call on you. If you have things to add, fun little tidbits, jokes, what have you, digressions against Robert Moses, may he burn in hell. Raise your hand as time permits. I'll call on you. Do not be offended if I have to say, hey, we have to move on. That happened last panel. I'm sorry, nothing personal, but we only have an hour. So, some of you may know more than trains about me. Some of you are guaranteed to know more about trains than me. Look, by sight, I don't know the difference between some long haul thing and like a switcher. Congratulations. Now, what I'm doing is I'm presenting real life as like a game, right? And some of you may be asking the very... Can anyone read that? Yeah, the projector sucked my last one. You might be asking yourself, is this thing an RPG or MMO? Why does Professor Nick use map and biome interchangeably? You may be asking why this fictional game has continuous open world, or does it have discrete maps? If the maps are procedurally generated or designed, is it turn-based real-time, how deep the player economy is, and whether the deranged man has ever played an online game in his life. This is a hard bit to put this whole presentation together to, and let alone stick to. So, I'm sorry I didn't go and build a GURP system for this. I apologize. Go touch grass. So, welcome to what I'm coining as a term for a game, Real Life Simulator, current version 2.024. That's the current year of our Lord 2024, if anyone was wondering. So, one day we'll get those liberties. Yeah, I don't know why I put that there when we're maybe looking at 2025. So anyway, welcome to 2024. This is a simulator game. So the objectives for this presentation: explore the map design of Real Life Simulator, the biomes, their layouts, and the type of meta they incentivize. Mechanics, their use costs, meta use, discuss movement and how you get around the map and all that fun stuff. And then, I'm going to have an open discussion, and I'm going to call on some of you. Oh my god, there's like people standing up in the back. There's too many people in here. I am like overwhelmed. People in the back, I'm going to call on you at the end because I'm going to need some nerfs and buffs for our current transit system in Real Life Simulator 2.024. We'll do that at the end. So, first, I present a question to the class because questioning the audience is a great way to pad out your presentation to an hour. In your video games that you kids seem to like, what makes a good map or biome, be it like in a real life more so, or an RPG, or like a Halo arena type shooter? Anything. Blue, shout it out. Yes. Say again? Access to water is a great thing. Should it be clean water? That's good. That's helpful. Yes. Anyone else?
Like a hub where you can do a lot of different things in one place rather than having to go to a lot of different places.
So a hub where you could do a lot of things in one place. One place. Ooh, that's a good one. Yes. Person up front and then person behind them. You. Yeah. Interesting areas to explore. Like, what makes something interesting?
Eye-catching, accessible, has hidden things you can find.
Eye-catching or accessible. And I said, yes, I called the person behind them.
Then, I guess building on that, more than one way to get to those interesting places, be it by foot, be it by transit, be it by vent.
Ooh, multiple ways of getting around these maps to interesting points. Yes, you in the front row, Dante.
Getting items, be it both common and rare.
Access to items both common and rare. Could you elaborate on that further?
Being able to buy them.
Being able to buy things and, let's say, get to them. I saw, yes.
So like fast loading and like unrestricted, like you can just go where you want by yourself. You need to wait for a bunch of people.
Yeah, so like fast loading, but not having to wait on people. Also, let me say, I appreciate that everyone is already sticking to the bit. That is awesome. Thank you so much. The person with the blue blazer.
Natural resources, aka crafting materials.
Ooh, natural resources. Oh, let's go from your point of view. Oh my gosh, there's so many people in the back. Person with the ears on the head.
Resources to actually fully experience said map.
Could you elaborate further? Resources to experience the whole map. What do you mean by that?
Resources to enter an area, you are provided those resources within the map in a timely fashion.
Ooh, that's a good point. So, right, so we do have to keep going, unfortunately. Right, I wish this was TransitCon 2024. Maybe one year. Honestly, at any point, raise your hand. If we have time, I'll call on you at any point. So, just some things musings I've had. What do we want out of IRL maps? Cost associated client or server side. Like, I like to think of, like, if this is a game, right? Like, as a person, I'm the client, the government is the server. What costs do they take on? How do we min-max our urban design? What do players need to get around or in a given play session? Now, in my mind, a play session, let's call it a day, right? What do you do in a day, right? Like, what things do I need in a day? I gotta go grocery shopping, I gotta go to the bank, I gotta go drop the kids off. I would call it a play session, right? So, and what do we want our interaction to incentivize? Incentives are an interesting thing. Was anyone in my Valve panel earlier? Oh, it's more than none. That's interesting. Remember how I talked about incentives in tutorials and incentivizing things, I don't want to be an economist apologencia, but can be a very valuable tool in both game design and urban design. So, there's a big rift in IRL map design. That rift is the I can't even say it. The 1.945 terrain generation patch. This is a patch. So prior to the 1.9, this is going to be hard to keep this bit and not just giggle my ass off. Cars were largely a specialized item exclusive to players with the rich characteristic. IRL, like cars, right? Not really a thing you could get. Yes, they existed, but before Henry Ford went and did his really cool thing of, mass producing that stuff, no one, your average Joe didn't really have a car. It was something really for the rich and a specialized item. In this picture here, we can see Dallas 2.3 edition to the left in this picture, and that actually, Dallas, which is notably a very car-centric city now, was, wow, remarkably walkable. So a lot of these cities that exist today that were generated before the 1.945 patch actually were not that reliant on cars. So we had a lot of centralization of spawns, item drops, and all this stuff being centralized encouraged a lot of player interaction. Yes, you with the airs.
Some files were also rebuilt
Could you elaborate? We'll get to that. Don't worry. Yeah. So we're still before the patch drops. So all this further encouraged its centralized interaction of players. That you got a lot of PvE and cool interaction. You got a lot of player economies and stuff like that. You could be pretty competitive in the meta. Without really needing to specialize into transit or movement as a mechanic, right? You could be a merchant or a shopkeeper, as your specialization with no points really dedicated to movement and still do pretty well in the meta and be competitive. So, post 1.945 terrain generation, that is Levitville IRL. It is one of the first suburbs in Long Island. Yeah, boo! So, there was a massive shift. Alright, I'm not that funny. So, a massive shift in the player economy following XP and gold payouts from the World War II raid event. Players given the vet status were given access to a college upgrade path and gold loans for real estate. Sadly, these real estate investments were not backed by NFTs. I don't know if you can still buy NFT real estate or not, but I don't know how well that's doing particularly. This is also, with this patch, we get the introduction of the suburb biome, and that's introduction in terrain generation. And there was a player event called Redlining. Where the player event known as White Flight led to events where to raid suburb biomes permitted and even optimized by devs. So the devs kind of looked the other way on this, and players with the status of black were largely, what's the gamer term screwed over? Yeah, nerfed. So we get to post one. I've thought of this just to take off my little bit hat, and this hat will represent if I'm doing the bit or not. So redlining is where we wouldn't grant home loans to black people. Just to be clear. And we had a lot of new home loans in the suburbs. So that's what White Flight is, in case anyone is not clear from the bit. Okay, back to the bit. Just in case anyone wasn't clear and gets the wrong messages from this. So, post 1.954 terrain generation. Almost new map. All maps are exclusively a suburb biome. The seeding algorithm was largely overhauled. Parking minimums, which is a minor metric in the seeding algorithm, for some reason the devs just cranked that up to 90%. I don't know why they did this. We also have huge increases in setback, lot sizes, and requirements for driveway space, other parameters that increase the physical size of player-built structures on the map. We could get larger maps because now you look at larger cities and they're physically larger. Yes? Yes, it was, and we're going to get to that. So that's a good point. Another thing with this. Actually, yeah, that was my literally next bullet, was that this is when Jane Jacobs started rolling in her grave. When rest areas, merchant locations, and PvP areas were separated. So you know what's cool? Bit hat is coming off. Do you know what's cool? Living above a pizza shop. That was the best year of my life at Temple, when I could go downstairs and buy a slice for $5. Hell yeah! New housing policies do not allow that. All right, BitHack goes back on. So... This means the bit's going. So the devs then decided that these different kind of player areas have to be in different areas. So your rest areas have to be in different areas from where you can buy loot and have loot drops and PvE events, and everything needs to be done in a different area. Can anyone spot the trouble with this? Yes, you in the back.
You required some sort of transportation bonus.
You need to travel from everything to everything, yes. The NIMBY also received a massive buff around this time. So, we're going to go through the 2.2 this is the current revision of the game categories. So, we have pre-patch cities. This is pre 1.954 version patches of cities. This is a bit of a misnomer because a lot of these cities, let me see here. Almost every city was actually built prior to this patch, but this is a good term to use in terms of like describing how cities are, because some cities were affected more by this patch than others, right? So generally used to describe cities unaffected by the patch. New York 1.995, the netcode will actually crash without a single brownstone texture asset for some reason. So the devs just left that in place because spaghetti code. That's a TF2 reference, if anyone knows. Yeah, in TF2 there's like a single coconut texture, and if you take it out of the game, it will crash. I'm dead ass serious. So these cities, because they're smaller, can run on like potato setups. You can get in there with your power e-machine and you can run this. I'm glad someone got that reference. So legacy mechanics such as trains remain in place and even viable for PvP play. This design allows for walking to be actually viable in the meta. Player rest areas, merchant, and PvP areas are all intermixed so that you don't have to travel far from one area to another. That's pretty cool, right? Like, I don't have to load in, anyone ever play, what's the game on SNES with the Earthbound? Remember how, it takes forever. You got to go to certain areas to save and all that, and you got to go back, and that sucks, right? What if you could just save all in one location, do your merchant stuff in all one location? That's kind of what these cities were like. So because of this, because they don't generate this terrain anymore, it's hard to find a server with open slots because these are very valuable. So, oh my gosh, the bit hat's coming off. So you talk about a city, when I take the hat off, okay, in case anyone's not aware, this means I'm talking real life. So in case anyone's not aware, you talk about a city like Manhattan. Why is Manhattan so expensive? Why is Philadelphia so expensive? Why is DC so expensive? Because they do not build housing like that anymore. And only rich people can now afford it because it's valuable and people want to live in walkable spaces with lots of transit. And they don't build that anymore and they don't make more of it. So, bit hat's going back on. So it's hard to find yes.
Question. Do you have any tips for matchmaking with like an established player?
Dude, you're really gonna push me on this bit. So there's this thing. It's a mechanic called rent control, and so what you gotta do is you gotta have like your grandma who plays on the server, and then she, unfortunately meets her end. And then you can move into her player slot on that server. That's a pretty good way of getting in. So, post 1.95 cities. This is, again, somewhat of a misnomer because, as I said, most cities were actually generated prior to the patch. But this is a good categorization, that's a difficult word, to kind of define and put these cities into different terms. So, city maps where active players rapidly rose after the 1.954 patch, and most of the terrain was generated with the new seeding algorithms. So also something that devs put in was something called the sprawl mechanism in the seeding algorithm, which fucking sucks. So we can see here some new cities. If I remember correctly, I think that's Phoenix right there. So you have this little tiny downtown of like 2 buildings and then suburbs. These maps are huge, and unfortunately, if you're like poor like me, your rig cannot run it because of the memory and processing requirements. Also, they actually require a lot of processing and back-end stuff on the server. So, because they're just larger, talk about like roads, all the players traveling over roads and all the bandwidth that takes up because they're farther apart actually takes up, like, it puts more work on the server. Same thing with like items such as water and electricity that have to be generated by the server and transported farther distances puts a lot more work on the server. This bit's very hard to keep to. Yes. Yes, and there's finite resources. They are resources, and there's not an infinite amount of them. These costs are often offset by attracting new players, which is a completely sustainable thing. It's a way to run your servers, just always attract new players, right? You can do that forever. So car spec builds, unfortunately, are practically required to play on these servers, so it's pretty much unplayable without purchasing a vehicle, which reminds me of another game. My personal opinion is, I'm like, this is just wildly mismanaged and hilarious to keep track of. So let's go through the biomes. So we have suburbs. Oh, you booed before. Come on. Boo. Didn't you listen to emo rock? Yes.
Are we getting to the path when they introduced the HOA debuff?
So to keep the scope, I can't. We just only have an hour. I did have a little write up on HOAs. Unfortunately, like, I had to go to the GameFAQ forums to do research on that and everything, and we only have an hour, so I just couldn't get to it. But HOAs are their own kind of gamer hell. Yeah. Imagine the worst Discord moderator you know, and then they control your neighborhood. So, suburbs are very interesting because they have existed before and after the patch, but what we kind of contemporaneously think of as suburbs was mostly built after the 1.954 patch. That's getting very hard to say. And those ones consist of the sprawling variety. We'll get to other varieties of suburbs later. Does anyone want to describe what sprawl is? Does anyone know a good idea of like urban sprawl, suburban sprawl? I saw a hand go up in the back, but I could ask. Yes.
When you are trying to be able to get more people into your server and the only spots that are available are outside of the core, so you end up spreading out all of the new instances out in the modern material while keeping the older patch.
Oh my gosh. Again, I appreciate everyone's commitment to the bit. Yeah, so sprawl is when like your core server is packed, so you have to keep putting memory modules in to expand it to get new players in because you haven't optimized your build. Did you have something to add up front?
I thought it was architectural urban definition.
Yeah, I don't know if we're doing real life or games anymore. I cracked my first wild turkey at 10 a.m., so. So, this kind of biome synergizes largely with the car use. Players utilizing the walk mechanic or the bike item experience active mobility debuffs, must throw saving throws when encountering cars. So kind of going with the White Flight player event, devs gave early access, unbeknownst to the large public at larger, with certain races selected in their character builds. It was White Flight. So, and then we get to the Farlands, the Exurb. Oh, if I have to listen to 538 tell me one more time about how the Exurbs have dominated the election. One guy in the back is laughing, and you need to go touch grass. So this is a sub-variety of the suburb. Want to make sure I'm good on time. Biomes far removed from their city centers, often with no train mechanic anywhere in sight. You have to use the drive mechanic, and even if you drive, you have to drive a while. So when we get this far out from the city center, actually floating point errors will start to do really weird things to the terrain. Like you just get these sprawling suburbs out in the middle of like the desert or farmland for no reason. Sorry, I see your hand up, but I gotta pace it a little faster. This is an active, hostile environment to non-driving spec builds. And again, like the suburbs, these kind of the player economies revolve around attracting new players that add gold to the economy, and it's, what's the term? It's a Ponzi scheme. Suburbs are a Ponzi scheme. Back to the bit. So streetcar suburbs, can I get a woo? Come on. I know, this room is packed. I know some of you are like transit pilled in here. You know exactly what these are. So these are commonly spawned in the pre-patch era. So how do I describe this? So these are suburbs. These are not as dense as cities, but they are built in such a way that you can run them on potato builds because they are more compact without being like apartment buildings and whatever. They're often built on the outer areas of city maps, but you have connections via the rail mechanic or even bus mechanic. Often they're called commuter rail or regional rail mechanics that can get you to the PvP or PvE areas when you need to go there from your rest area out in the streetcar suburbs. Even in these areas, though, because they are a smaller map size, the walking mechanics are actually still viable in the meta, and because, hence the name streetcar, the walking mechanic is synergized, actually, so you can get a lot farther by foot with the streetcar or trolley activation. So, if you've ever heard of the 15 megabyte city, this is kind of where it comes from. So when we say 15 megabyte city, that means that with a computer only running 15 megabytes, you can still have with one level load everything you need. You can have your merchant, you can have your PvP area, you can have your rest area. Everything you need in one play session, more or less, is right there. You don't have to load another level, even on 15 megabytes of RAM. Boo. Thank you. So the Strode. Portmanteau, a word I recently learned how to pronounce, of street and road combined by forum users on GameFAQs. This is a microbiome often found in suburbs as an RNG encounter during fast travel. So often, what's unfortunate is often this is where players like their experience is like that. That's where their spawn is nearby there, and so like that's where like they're doing most of their like fighting and like interaction is like on these environments. But even often outside of that, if you're doing like overworld travel, you'll have like RNG events where you stop in these areas and you have to like buy I don't know, whatever you buy in like Elite Dangerous, Starfield. I don't play games. This is kind of universally hated. So, why these suck? They simultaneously are built to allow seamless intermap travel while also trying to facilitate player encounters in PvP. So you're trying to build a mechanic within your server that allows you to travel from one biome or larger like map area to another, but also to allow for RNG events and like merchants and PvP. So what Strode's tried to do is allow you to drive fast, but also have a bunch of stuff to do off of the road. You can't do both. I see a hand.
Okay, sorry though, like, you already have the hat off, so this is perfect. What exactly does the PvP mean in this context?
Remember the first slide? Go touch grass. Oh no. So PvP and PvE is yeah, I'll put one hat on. Is kind of how like I like to think of like interacting with other players, almost like third spaces. Does everyone know what a third space is? For those who don't know, a third space is somewhere that is a basically free or cheap place to hang out where you can just interact with other human beings and hang out and drink a coffee and just bullshit, whatever. Yeah, it was like how pubs and bars used to be, where you kind of would meet your like neighbors and all that. We don't really have those anymore. I lost my track of thought. So, like, yeah, it's not home, it's not work, but it's a third place to hang out. So, within this kind of game that does and doesn't exist, that's an MMO and an RPG and a single player game, PvP, PvE areas are kind of like what I like to think of as third spaces. If that makes any sense. Cool. Back to the game. So, it accomplishes neither. It sucks. It sucks at all of this. It takes forever to load. I can't get from one server to another. The merchants, I try to load up items, and I put like 3 healing potions in my cart, and it takes forever, and then it takes forever to load back out of the area. It sucks. It sucks at both. Also, then all the car users, they get into all these interactions. It's a mess. So, see that Cheesecake Factory over there? You can visit it if you're respecting the car use. So, players using the walk or cycling mechanics take double the mobility debuffs. It sucks to walk here. You can't walk here, you'll die. Basically, the only players who go on these servers and walk are doing like a meme run. Kieran, thank you in particular. That's half A press. So the massive map sizes preclude users with low-end hardware from doing this. So we're about to rank all the transit options we have. Let's get started. So, walking.
Finish!
So that's a cool thing called I think it's called like a sprawl or something in some cities where they just let scramble. All the stoplights stop for cars at once and everyone can just cross in any direction they want. So walking. This is the default moving mechanic. Legacy servers were often actually built around this, and old cities in like the pre-1.945 patch were often built around this too. It was the only movement around the 1.0 release. In our current meta though, it's pretty overlooked. But I think, dude, this mechanic right here. You look at the 2024 season of IRL. I think, dude, this is a low-key sleeper build that has a lot. It has a lot of potential. So low cost, no need for tech upgrades. You don't have to spec into it. No required feeder ability. Like, this is a low-cost way to do a lot of damage, to do a lot of like effective action on your servers for almost little costs. And if you think of cost as gold, you think of cost as time, you think of cost as like tech upgrades, boom, we got walking. Despite the nerfs, it's still a great option. Where are we gonna put this? How are we gonna? F tier. I put B. Yes. So, what's our next fucking one? This is my AMV for bikes. I'm really feeling I should have put the unregistered hypercam watermark on it.
Wow! Unbelievable! Making it rain in New York. Trying not to use it. Way downtown. So again, he's 6 for 7 from downtown here in the first.
I wasn't brave enough for the unregistered hypercam watermark, and I regret it now. So I'm sorry if I'm speeding up and not calling on people as much, but we're down to like 25 minutes. I just want to make sure we're on time. So bikes. So pretty affordable in terms of infrastructure, even though we don't build it. So no feats required for player use. You do have to have a simple dex check for each use. Now, it's not much. It's like an 8 or something. But if you're completely, haven't put any points into that, you might have a bad time. So, this isn't necessarily something for inner server or overworld travel, but it's great for local travel. This also is a great way. This is similar to the walking mechanic, yet you get a lot more speed for like not having to put any feats or like really build or spec your build for this. Yeah, great option for just getting around your local map. Now the e-bike upgrade. If you do that on the tech tree, and it's only one purchase on the tech tree, so it doesn't cost much. It's just an off branch. Like, you don't even have to have any prereqs for it. It's great because then your mobility on the bike, it's completely separated from the strength. So you can go pretty far even if you're like a 4 or something strength, like you're a wizard or something. So sir, yes.
Are we ranking these for Ironman runs or just regular?
Regular. Yeah, still raise your hands. If I skip over you and we run out of time, don't be offended. Yeah, you have to make saving throws anytime you encounter a car. Hat off. Bike lanes are so cheap and you can get around so easily with them. Oh my God, bro. Most car rides are like under 5 miles. Most car rides are like a mile or two. Like, most people's car rides are like to the grocery store a mile or two. You could just do it on your bike, but you can't because it's so dangerous to bike out there that, like, why would you do that, right? Yes. Sorry? Car lanes or bike lanes? Yeah, but also it's less pavement, right? Than a car, right? Yeah, like you talk about like a bike lane, that's a lot less pavement you have to repave. Also, the damage roads take is it geometric as weight goes up? It's a 4th power. Oh yeah, okay. Go back to math, nerd. So actually, it's like if you talk about like a car doing damage on a road, every time that car doubles in weight, it actually does like quadruple as much damage. Oh wait, yeah, it would be like 16 times. So as cars get very heavy, they do a lot more damage. Bikes do like no damage to roads. Yes. Yes, also painted lanes, death gutters, where they put one of them Johns on like the side of a highway and call it inclusive infrastructure, where it's like go on and die. Okay. Back to the game. I should get like a headset to like symbolize this. Yes. Are developers? I want to say things, but I don't want to get the cops called on me. I might have a joke for you later. I'll think about it. We got to move on. So where are we placing bikes? A? B? Yeah. So, I did a little one for the e-scooter. So, similar to bike use, but the dex check is reduced to a challenge rating. It's reduced to a challenge rating even compared to the bike. I don't remember what I meant when I wrote that. Luckily, though, there's no strength check like an e-bike. There's no strength check associated with an e-scooter. You do need to pay more for it. An e-bike costs more than like a rinky-dink bike you buy at a pawn shop like I did. You do, unfortunately, you get a massive debuff to your charisma when you use an e-bike. I've done it though, and it wears off after a day. You just don't do any like persuasion checks within that day. Yes. Well, yeah, if you try and do like the spinny flip. I'm not playing Tony Hawk. I just don't want to get a DUI, and I'm too cheap for an Uber. The weird position in the meta does create some weird PvP interactions with walking users and car players. It's because kind of like the devs haven't really figured out where they fall in the meta, or even where they fall in like a physical arena. Because we don't have bike lanes, and scooters could just go in bike lanes, and we don't have those, so they go in sidewalks and people get mad, or they go in roads and car drivers get mad and just build a bike lane. It's cheap. I gotta get back to the game. Altogether, it's a very No. I think, again, another sleeper build for 2024, the 2024 season. I think this is very promising. We could see this really take off. The player base just kind of sucks, and it's annoying, and I get it. But, it's we'll make it work. Where are we placing this? C. Yay. Hey, I heard A. But B. Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at our next transit mechanic. It's buses! It's a bus. So got a lot of things to talk about with buses. So to use it, like a bike, no skill or feat check required. You can just hop on that, John. So this is popular with servers where the active player count is too low for a train, subway, or light rail, or a monorail. I can control you guys like a fiddle. But it's good for places where too low, the players for a bus or a train, but it's a good system. Again, like the other systems, it synergizes with walking. You're a walking player, this can really up your game and make you a much more viable player in the meta. Again, it's good for local map or inter-biome travel. Not so much for getting between servers or the overworld travel. Actually, I've seen first-class buses that are kind of interesting and sleeper buses in the U.S. And just as an aside, not good or bad, I just find that very interesting. Also, I took Megabus once, and it wasn't bad. And inner-city bus service can be very valuable for financially people who don't have a lot of money to get around cities. It synergizes with bike, walking, and e-scooters. They got those cool old grills on the front of buses you could toss a bike on, and so you can really up, your effective area if you're a bike or walking user. Unfortunately, most buses do have an active pollution debuff to the local area, but luckily this is less than car users. Because you get the scalability. You only get one bus going through an area rather than a bunch of cars. You get the less pollution debuff. So where would we put buses? A? Oh, man. You guys are going to hate me. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I say something? Rapid transit buses? No, this is where this shit got knocked into 12th gear. So rapid transit buses are a player mod that some servers have installed. They really they overhaul the balance and mechanics of buses. So they get the mechanics such as dedicated lanes, rights of way, which if you notice there, it's not right of ways, it is right of ways. I said it wrong. Rights of ways. If anyone doesn't, a right of way is basically the area where a road or a rail or a bus can drive through, not the actual road, but the cleared area where cool. So, BRT buses, they do have initiative roles at PvP interactions with cars. So, gamer hat off. What is used one of the key aspects of BRT and bus rapid transit is that they get stuff like green wave technology. That's basically as buses get closer to intersections, they're going to get the priority for green lights. They're going to take priority over cars. Gamer hat back on. So they get an initiative on PvP with buses. Advantage, rolling with advantages is where you roll with 2 d20s instead of 1, and then you take the higher value of the 2 d20s. For those who haven't played Boulder Gates 3, BRT stops are stronger than traditional buses. You don't take debuffs from environmental hazards, and They do. Oh my God, what did I write here? BRT bus stops allow players to conduct trading for fare off bus, reducing lag during bus stops. You get to pay for the fare at the bus stop instead of on the bus. So you all can just load on it once. It reduces lag when the bus gets there. There are higher technical costs to install this on the server because you got to do the dedicated lanes and everything. Yes, I see a hand in the back. Sorry, I heard, why don't I set up the servers so they don't slow down the play? Sorry? Oh, you're trying to bait me. You're trying to bait me into Twitter discourse. I'm not going to do it. I mean, look, if I rebuilt the server entirely, you could hop on that shit for free every day, but that is something outside the scope of this discussion, unfortunately. I would make buses and trains free, though, if I was king of the world.
Let's go.
Because someone traveling on bus goes to work where they make more money in tax revenue, but again, a discussion for another day. My gamer hat, no. People will know I'm cool. So where are we putting BRT service? Oh, it's going up there. Bee! So let's get to trolleys. Trolleys are a mixed bag. So they're pretty affordable. They're scalable. They do require more server work. You got to install all the mods on the server. That is downtime for the server. They do have better optimization than buses, so you can move more players at once than a bus. Now, I know someone's going to say, oh my gosh, I have to keep doing this. Yes, there's a lot of overlap between buses and trams. I know that you could have bendy buses and you could have bi-articulated buses where there's two bends in the bus, and that kind of becomes like a tram, and you could give a bus a dedicated way, and then it's kind of like a tram. But they roll on rails, and that's kind of cool. So the direct electrical connection via overhead catenary, which is those wires that run up on top when you're playing the game and you can see the wires running over the trolley. They provide electrical power. That removes that pollution debuff almost entirely. It cuts it out entirely from the local area, and in fact, more traditional modes of transit such as buses and cars actually provide, they give a debuff to pollution and HP via even rubber tires give off particulates, which provide a active debuff to health. And these run on rails, and with the overhead electrical lines, you remove that local HP debuff almost entirely. Now you do have to factor in the the overworld debuff of pollution where you're getting that power, but I can only take this bit so far. So again, they synergize the same way that buses synergize with dedicated rights of way. If you have a tram that's on rails and with a catenary over top, and it looks cool, but it's getting stuck by cars in front of it, it doesn't do much good, right? You gotta give it its own right of way, its own lane. Back to the game. This allows a lot magnitude, more map coverage, and again, synergizes with the walking mechanic. So you can also put these in a line and make a tram, and that's kind of cool. Where are we going to put this? A tier. See? Hey! So, yes.
Why would you ever build bus stop at trams and let trams because they're actually
How much time we got? Something that I will kind of try and discuss at the end as time permits is that transit is often a holistic thing where there is no panacea for getting around. There's no one solution that works for every city. Buses in New York, if we build new lines for Manhattan with buses, it's not a great idea because Manhattan is the richest city in the world. They can afford a new subway line. That's a whole other discussion. But, right, Manhattan can do a subway line. But, I don't know, Iowa Bluffs Nebraska or whatever the hell. Now, they could use transit, but they might not need heavy rail. So there is a range and spectrum of solutions that can work for different cities, and we need to look and take a holistic look at what will work for each city. Now, yes, bus rapid transit and trams have a lot of overlap, and when you start to get into like a bus rapid transit network where like you have these dedicated rights of way and all this land, and you go, well, how much more money would it be to install rails and an overhead line? Yeah, might kind of just want to do a tram, but again, it depends. So, let's get to cars.
Soft. Overrated. Pretty boy. A
Cars! Come on, boo! So the most common method of inter and overworld travel in the 2.204 whatever year it is patch. You have to specialize into these builds. They require you have to get a feat for this, dude. Everyone who uses this has to get a feat. And like I said, all these maps nowadays you require this. So you need a feat. You have to have a dedicated feat for this. That's bad game design. When you're going through a game and you have to just automatically basically pick a feat no matter what kind of build you're doing, that's boring game design. You're taking away agency from players. Also, cars cost money. Also, cars don't scale up as well, as you can see on the graph. They have high technical demands on the server, and when a lot of players drive cars, it slows down the server. Now, they do have their merits. Cars are good for point-to-point travel. I think I would want my ambulance driver to drive an ambulance and not take a train, or delivery driver, or whatever. But as the default mechanic, kind of sucks, right? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so cars also give an active pollution debuff to the immediate area and contributes to the climate change day zero server vulnerability. Where am I putting cars? D. The Tesla loop. This is the server mod equivalent of Fallout the Frontier for more reasons than one. Not only is it I'm sorry, I can't call it anymore. I gotta make time. Not only is it technically kind of very weird, but the guys who built this stuff have a lot of weird ideas that's like, oh wow, that's wild. High lag in boarding areas. You need a player at each car to operate and make dexterity checks within the tunnel. It greatly limits speed. Only 4 players per car, and also it makes a lot of server downtime. The game related gives you a charisma bonus at least. Where are we putting this? Yeah, boo, down. All right. Now are we ready for the goat? Are we ready for the goat?
Billy, I need more money.
We don't have any
I can't
more money,
compete
Billy.
against a $120 million payroll with $38 million.
We're not going to compete with these teams that have big budgets. We're going to work within the constraints that we have, and you're going to get out and do the best job that you can recruiting new players. We're not going to pay $17 million a year to players.
I'm not asking you for tens of 20, $30 million. I'm just asking you for a little bit of help. Just get me a little bit closer, and I will get you that championship team.
Making a joke out of the American League. They were in Detroit today. This team was written off. How do you explain otherwise? How do you explain otherwise some of the victories that they've come up with?
To have a winning streak of anything like this duration, you have to be good, but there's an element of randomness to it. The 1927 Yankees, Ruth, Gehrig, Murderers Row, some people still say the best team ever. Longest winning streak for them that year, 9.
You guys try to analyze it from a numbers standpoint, and I'm telling you, there is no explanation for what's occurring right now. It's bigger than us.
We're on page 1 of the New York Times today. They are the story in sports in this entire country.
Pitch, here it is. Swing and a miss. Struck him out. Number 17. The most amazing thing you could ever imagine.
20. We're going to take the NL 120, baby.
Thank you. Trains! So trains have unmatched scalability. So trains can move. If you take like your Ethernet cable, they can transmit more players per like hour than any other mean of transit. The overhead electrification model allows near elimination of pollution in the immediate areas. It is harder to implement these server side, but you get a lot of payoffs and a lot of like buffs once they're done. These were largely phased out with the new mods and patches, but they were like in previous servers, and they're great. Light rail and subway variants increase feasibility of walking builds for map travel, and they can even do overworld travel. Where are we putting the? So, all right, I got 5. We got 5 minutes. 5 minutes in the back. So, some of the platforms are owned by the devs, but then others are owned by private servers. All the servers out west are basically owned by the clan BNSF and Norfolk Southern. And so Amtrak needs to lease out server space from them. Only in the Northeast does Amtrak, that player clan, own their own servers, their private servers for play. That's a whole other discussion. I want to talk more. But you in the gray. Yes. Dude, no. Dude, people get all teary-eyed for horse meta and all that. It was walking, dude. Walking was the dominant mechanic of the time. Yeah, I put horses C tier. With the blue hat, yes. Yes. Yeah. Just size after size. Yes. With the yellow ledyard. Because, so there's this mechanic. If you read about it, you could read about it in the subreddit for IRL called institutional momentum, where it's very hard to change government institutions and stuff because they're just like, this is how we've always done it, even though it's like we've done this for 50 years. This is like, no, this is how it's been done since the time of eternity. We've just built highways. Like, yeah. Yes. You tell me. It's on my car. With the blue shirt and blue hair. .7 patch. These metaphors are starting to go over my head. They're getting too metaphysical for me. So we can still screw around a little bit, but also you can see here, I'm going to get off stage once the staffer tells me to get the hell out of here. But further readings, if you would like them, are Death and Life of the Great American City by Jane Jacobs, Geography of Nowhere by Howard Kunstler. Great reads. Both of them were inspiration for this. Great. Not Just Bikes on YouTube. He really... Yes, he's Eurocentric, but you know what? I'm orange. You know, he got us all into liking bikes. Strong Towns, Alan Fisher on YouTube. He did the opening music video, and RM Transit, amongst many others. We don't have time to name. I do actually think that's time. Thank you so much for showing up. Also, thank everyone who raised their hand and answered and did things within the bit of this being a game. Thank you so much, because I was putting this together and I'm like, this is gonna be insane. No one's gonna understand this, and you guys did awesome. Enjoy your MAGFest. Have a great night. Thank you.